The manufacturing sector cannot compete because the American dollar is too high. So it was a case of thinking what they had was a trophy of becoming the dominant country on the planet. It was actually a poisoned chalice.
If the US is able to achieve its objective of devaluing the US dollar and reversing its trade position in this electoral cycle, what does it look like? It doesn't have a huge amount to export.
Well, it still has a substantial manufacturing sector, of course. And a lot of innovation occurs in America these days, which used to take place in Japan before their bubble economy burst. So they still have a base to work from. But the big trouble they have is they've got to not just bring the manufacturing back on shore, they have to also train the skilled workers they'd need for machine tools and things of that nature. And there's a famous clip you can find on the internet where Tim Cook, the head of Apple, said that if he wanted to have all the machine tool experts in America in one room, he could fit it inside the auditorium he was speaking in, whereas in China he'd need to rent a couple of dozen football stadiums. So China's upskilled and America's downskilled. That's the major problem they face. Also, of course, if manufacturing comes back, it's going to have a lot less labour than it had when it went offshore in the 80s and 90s.
Many conventional economists don't believe that trade deficits hurt the economy and can be beneficial to living standards by essentially just exchanging paper money for goods that make our lives better. Do they have it wrong?
Yeah, that's pretty dumb. It's thinking statically about a dynamic issue. Yes, okay, if you send over pieces of paper that don't cost you much to make, and you look at the cost of production of money, it's far less than the value of money. Of course, it takes a lot of time to make a manufactured good and a lot of inputs and so on. So yes, out of each individual trade you gain. But what then happens is you stop investing, you stop developing the technology, the country that's doing the exporting and the manufacturing builds up its industrial prowess, and you end up being stripped of your productive capabilities. So I think it's a simple argument for simple minds.
Donald Trump is very enthusiastic about the use of tariffs. Will they work?
Well, that's the problem. They've got a good idea of getting rid of trade imbalances and a bad mechanism, because you could have used tariffs in the 19th century, and in fact America did that. One of my great colleagues, Michael Hudson, published a book called America's Protectionist Takeoff. It was under protection that they dragged shut industry from Europe selling into America. You had to make the American goods, and American manufacturing grew at the time. But ever since the 1970s, American corporations largely have relocated their productive facilities overseas to take advantage of cheap wages, and as a result of that, about 40% of global trade passes within the same company. It's between countries, but in the same company. And they also ship components willy-nilly between different countries. You can find examples of components that go through 5 countries on the way to and from America. Now, that means they're going to be facing the tariff 5 times inside the same company. It's going to screw the accounts of corporations. It's not the way to bring back you certainly can't maintain the production, and it's going to be causing chaos in American boardrooms.
If the US continues down this path with tariffs, even against its friends, what's it going to achieve? What's the end game here for the US?
Well, I think the main thing I worry about is the obsession with running a balanced budget, the government budget. That's, I think, a big mistake. But the combination of the two are likely to mean America goes into a recession.
Donald Trump has said it's going to be short-term pain for long-term gain. I mean, is there a credible view, as has been written about, that Donald Trump is actually the one who stands to benefit financially while the US economy falls?
Well, Trump is a good salesman. Okay? Whether he's a good planner is a different story entirely. So I think there'll be quite a bit of chaos for America out of this. I expect reactions back because, as you know, a short while ago, the tariffs against China are 145%. He's now dropping them dramatically. And it's often the bargaining tactic he's always said is go in hard, shock the hell out of your opponent, give them an ultimatum, and hope they pick it up, and if you don't, you backtrack. And that's what he's doing right now. So I don't think we're going to see as disastrous levels of tariffs as he was first of all proposing, which would basically separate global manufacturing and global production from America to the rest of the world. It won't end up there, but it's pretty damn scary to go through in the process. And again, I'd hate to be somebody in a boardroom making a decision about what to do.
You mentioned a US recession. How bad could it be?
Not as bad as the global financial crisis, which of course, again, mainstream economists did not see coming. Their models don't include the role of money or debt or credit in macroeconomics, so they didn't see that coming. This could be a different form of shock, but I've already heard that there's about a threefold increase in container bookings from China to America after the most recent decline. So it could be a very short, sharp punch, a bit like a very condensed version of COVID.
Finally, Steve, I think it's important that we delineate your view on Trump's approach versus the US trade policy objectives.
Yeah, well, the trade policy objective, I think, is quite sensible. Unbalanced trade was supposed to be fixed up by exchange rate movements. When you first had people arguing for floating exchange rates back in the 1970s, when the old Bretton Woods fixed exchange rate to the gold was abolished, the argument was, well, you know, just let the market mechanism work and prices will drive us toward equilibrium. Well, 50 years later, equilibrium is equally further away. For example, the country that I now live in, the Netherlands, has been running a consistent trade surplus of 8% of GDP. America's been running a consistent trade deficit of 4% of GDP. None of this has changed over time. So the price mechanism doesn't work the way that economic textbooks think it works. You have to do something different. You have to design a mechanism that makes it unpalatable for countries to run sustained trade deficits or surpluses.
Steve Keen, thank you.
Thank you.